Awesome. So, hi everyone, and welcome to our Winter 21 Career Week presented by the Business and Tourism Department. Career Week consists of a series of panels where we can talk to professionals in these careers. So today we have some accounting professionals. My name is Kayla, and I will be your moderator for today. And I would like to start by saying thank you to our panelists for giving their time for a panel that will proceed until 11:45. Today we have Lauren Alexander joining us, Carolyn Scissons, and Tyrone Cotie. Cotie. There we go. To start, Lauren is a senior controller for Develop Nova Scotia, a provincial crown corporation that leads in sustainable development of high potential properties and infrastructures to drive an inclusive economic growth. As a senior controller, Lauren works all across of Develop Nova Scotia's functions to provide strategic financial guidance. Prior to joining Develop Nova Scotia, Lauren began her career with the Nova Scotia provincial government and held a senior accounting and financial roles in both the public and private sectors. Lauren holds a Bachelor of Business Administration degree from Francis Xavier University and a Bachelor of Arts and Master of Business Administration from St. Mary's University. And then we have Tyrone, who is the Vice President, Treasury and Planning at Chorus Aviation, Inc. Chorus is a global provider of integrated regional aviation solutions. Tyrone graduated from St. Mary's University in Halifax with a Bachelor's of Commerce degree and obtained his Charters Accounting designation with KPMG in Halifax. More recently, he completed FEI's Canada Queen's University Leadership Beyond Finance program. And lastly, we have Carolyn joining us, who started her career with the biggest four accounting firms before moving out to Calgary to take a variety of energy industry roles. Her most recent corporate position as was the Director of Accounting and Finance with Global Energy Company, overseeing finances for a regulated portfolio with $1 billion in revenue. She now serves as a founder and CEO of Regulatory Learning Lab. Carolyn education includes an accounting degree and CPA CMA designation in addition to a PMP, CIA, and MBA. I'm going to ask everyone some questions and go around. And I'd like to mention, if we have time at the end, you are able to chat in the chat box and it will go to one of our hosts so we can ask our panelists these questions if we have time. So I know I gave a brief introduction for everyone, but if you have anything you can add on to that, would you like to introduce yourselves? I'll start with Carolyn right now.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So I actually started out my career in KPMG in Halifax. So I lived on the Bedford Highway, very close to your school. And then very recently started my own business. So I've been out in Calgary working in industry for over a decade. And now I've kind of taken my accounting background into a little bit more of a creative area. So I do video and online education design and development for utilities and regulators. So we do everything from turning depreciation into detective spy scene segments and really just trying to take pretty dry subjects and take a bit more creative twist on it. So that's a little bit more about me.
Awesome. Thank you, Carolyn. And Tyrone, would you be able to take it away by introducing yourself?
Sure, Kayla. Thanks very much. And good morning, everyone. Look, I think you gave a pretty good background. I'll just add a few points. A little bit about Chorus. Chorus is headquartered in Halifax. We're a public company listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange. And I guess a little known fact is that Chorus Aviation employs about 4,500 people across the country, as well as in Dublin, Ireland. And as I said, head office just in the city, not a company that people know a lot about. But I expect most people have probably flown on one of our planes as we fly about 80% of Air Canada's regional routes under the banner Air Canada Express.
Awesome. Thanks for adding that in, Tyrone. And Lauren, would you be able to give a little introduction for yourself as well?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Kayla, you did a pretty good job basically describing what I do now. I work with Develop Nova Scotia, which is a provincial crown corporation. We own a lot of assets along the Halifax waterfront and the Lunenburg waterfronts. But we are expanding our mandate. We used to be called the Waterfront Development Corporation, and our mandate has changed over the last few years. So we're now more focused on the entire province rather than just those two waterfront areas, though they are still a very important part of our portfolio. And we get involved in a lot of infrastructure development that includes placemaking, providing places, building places with people and for people that attract, making sure that Nova Scotians and people are attracted to the province of Nova Scotia. So I'll just leave it there for now.
Awesome. Thank you for adding that on. So I'm gonna move on to our question 2. And it's gonna be, what led you to the position you are in today? Like your education, job experience, possibly co-ops, professional connections. And I'll swing back to you, Lauren, if you can start.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, like you said in my introduction, I started my career with the provincial government, so it kind of gave me a little bit of an inside knowledge to the government side, though the Crown Corporation is also self-revenue driven. It's not just funded by the province. So my background, both with the public and the private sector, kind of led me towards this position. And getting my CPA designation was an asset as well to be able to get into this position. I didn't really have anybody there that I knew, so it wasn't about who you knew to get on, but I think just a combination of my education and my working background led me to get that role.
Awesome. Yeah, it seems your experience helped you to be where you are today. So Carolyn, I'll move towards you. What led you to this position you're in today?
Yeah, really similar to Lauren. I think, the combination of that education and experience kind of made it possible. So I kind of during the pandemic, I had kind of worked in corporate my entire life for long over a decade, and just kind of decided this is probably the worst possible time to start a business, but I'm going to do it anyway. So yeah, it's I think having worked where I've worked and gained a lot of the skills and that firsthand experience made it possible. I think if I had kind of tried to go into creating a startup earlier on in my career, it would have been a lot harder, and it'd be a lot harder to kind of get credibility with different clients and to be able to really take some of those things that you need to know within a corporate setting actually ended up helping me quite a bit in moving more into the startup and an entrepreneurial space. So yeah, absolutely. I think that education and that experience definitely helped. But yeah, if you had told me earlier on in my career when I was starting out in accounting that I would now be doing, graphic designs and cartoon animation, I would say that was definitely not something that we covered in Accounting 101. So yeah, I think it's like studying accounting sets you up to do things that you might have not anticipated when you started on in your career path.
Oh yeah, I can see how that can happen. But thanks for adding that, Carolyn. And Tyrone, would you be able to tell us what led you into the position you're in today?
Yeah, sure, Kayla. Look, the reason I am where I am today is because I really had a desire to be part of the planning and implementation of corporate strategy. I always wanted to be in the middle of things. I'm one of 8 children, so I guess I always was in the middle of things by default. I started off at St. Mary's University. I took a Bachelor of Commerce with accounting major. And then similar to Carolyn, I went to KPMG in Halifax, roamed through the same halls that Carolyn roamed through. And usually when you start off with the accounting firms, you don't actually get near the windows. You start in the middle and work your way out to the windows. But I started there, got my CPA, worked with a number of organizations from public companies such as Clearwater Seafoods and Chorus Aviation, to private companies, small owner managed businesses, not-for-profits, film and television clients. When you work in Halifax, you get to work with a plethora of clients and industries, which is a great way to get exposed to industries you might like and different positions you might like. One of the companies I met was Clearwater Seafoods, and when they went public on the Toronto Stock Exchange in 2002, approached me and offered me a job to go work and take over their investor relations program, or start their investor relations program. So I took that job. And then over the years at Clearwater, I was there for 14 years. Over the years, I took on more responsibility, eventually moving into Treasury, where to be honest, I found it to be the most interesting. That's where I got to develop and implement their strategies around financial management, including capital structure planning, i.e. deciding if we were going to raise debt or equity, their liquidity strategies, financial risk management, foreign exchange hedging, dividend policies, all topics that I would have never thought I'd be working at coming out of university, or even at KPMG, but all were very, very interesting because it required you to put a lot of thought into what you're doing, both currently and how it would play out and impact the business in the longer term. At the same time, recognizing the importance of networking, and I think this is a point I really want to make to everyone, is that networking is just as important as the work you do, because the networking you do, it leads you, it opens your eyes up to different opportunities, and also between jobs, it can also be a great way to lead you to new opportunities. So I joined an organization called Financial Executives International, and I took a real active role. I thought the Atlantic chapter was fantastic, and that's why I joined. But I got also involved at the national level. And over the years, I ended up presenting at a number of conferences, taking on board positions, and ended up chairing FEI's national board. What was really important about that is through all that active activity in FEI, I got to meet a tremendous amount of people from across the country. And that's been very helpful. And one of the companies I actually have met through all that activity at FEI was, of course, Aviation. And I was presenting on capital structure and things around the types of work I do now. As Chorus began to assemble a team to implement what I would describe as a pretty aggressive growth plan, they knew who I was, and they reached out and asked me to join the company with chief responsibility to drive and implement their funding strategy. So, most of the jobs I've had over the last 20 years have come from just working with people either in a casual manner, like through FEI, or working with them as a client when I did with KPMG and Clearwater. Thanks, Kayla.
Awesome. Thanks for adding that, Tyrone. Yeah, I know myself and many others could maybe attest that we're encouraged to network, and I can see how it has this positive impact on us after education. So I'm going to move on to our next question, and it is going to be, would you be able to share if there are any types of jobs available for students who are considering going into a career in your company? This could include new graduates, summer or part-time positions, or even co-op opportunities. I'll get you to start, Carolyn.
Sure. So in a startup right now, we are in a company that's right now looking to kind of hire different people. But that said, I think what we end up looking for is some of those softer skills, right? Like, I think one of the things that really helps differentiate and help students get roles, whether it's internship or co-op roles, is you need to know your stuff. There's no question you need to know the accounting side of things. But I really think that networking and some of the things that you do that's just a little bit different, kind of how Tyrone was mentioning, that networking is really, really important because it demonstrates that you take initiative, that you have some drive. So I think my advice would be to really look at approaching job applications, not necessarily from just, hide behind your computer screen and click submit and send in your resume. I think kind of get involved, find some different groups that interest you. And, whether that's doing an unpaid internship or some volunteer roles, you really don't know where those things are going to lead. So I would say kind of take a creative approach. And I think a lot of times hiring managers will look and they'll say, hey, you know what? I really didn't think I had a role for this person. But once you get to know them and interact with them more, you start to say, wait a minute, this person is like, we need this person on our team, and you end up kind of being able to create your own opportunities that way. So yeah, that's kind of would be my suggestion for people kind of looking for that kind of that initial experience, getting themselves out there.
No, thank you for adding that. Even if companies aren't hiring currently, we can definitely take that away, especially in case anybody ever crosses paths again. And that's some great information we can use. So Lauren, I'll swing over to you. Would you be able to tell us any job opportunities or opportunities in general for people coming into your company, for students?
Sure. So we are a fairly small organization. We do some seasonal hirings in the summertime for some of our outdoor positions. So it's not really accounting directly related, but we do hire for our marine summer ambassador positions and for our summer custodian positions. But with those positions, you're exposed to the organization and all the different aspects of the organization, from our marketing and communications team to our planning and development team. So it kind of gives you that inside, a little bit more knowledge on how those organizations run. But one thing I will draw on my own experience and where I started when I was just out of university was kind of unexpectedly with the provincial government. And what I didn't realize at the time was, once you kind of have your foot in the door, how many opportunities there are within that government, and opportunities to grow and to go into fields that you may not have originally thought of going into. So I would just mention to everybody who's watching here is just to kind of keep that in mind. There's a number of entry-level positions that are great to have right out of university. And have great benefits. And when you get your foot in the door, it can just open your eyes to many other opportunities throughout your career. And it doesn't mean you have to stay there for a long term, but at least give you a good start.
Thanks for adding that, Lauren. Yeah, this is my co-op position actually, and even from my first one and this one, I'm seeing so much more that I didn't even realize existed until I kind of got my foot in the door. So that's perfect you say that. There's just so many more opportunities it opens your eyes to that you don't even realize. Got to start somewhere. So Tyrone, would you be able to take it away with any opportunities coming into your job?
I sure can. I would tell you that in non-COVID times, we usually have a lot more opportunities. But as you know, there's a lot of aircraft sitting on the ground, and as a result, we've had to pare back a little bit. But that said, the company's still moving on very strongly, and we have to be ready when flying starts again in a safe mode to be ready to go. So we still have quite a few folks within the company. And we have a lot of folks that we'll hopefully be bringing on over the next 3 to 6 months. What I can say is that we normally hire co-op and summer students, non-co-ops in the finance department at Chorus to assist with general accounting. We have an internal audit function. Both of those positions those summer jobs can lead to full-time positions with the company. And we've got a number of hires who come through co-op programs. We've also hired a number of university and CPA graduates. Our finance function is fairly diverse. It includes corporate reporting, treasury, where I spend my time, internal reporting, internal audit, payroll, payables. As you can imagine, the payroll is not usually a big department, but with 4,500 employees, payroll is actually you can build a really interesting career at a company like Chorus. Payables functions, as I mentioned, we have people in Halifax, Dartmouth, Toronto, and in Dublin, Ireland. What I'd also say, and Carolyn touched on this, and I think Lauren may as well, is that look for those great summer jobs but also don't be afraid to get out there and do some volunteer work in the summer, and look at organizations that will expose you to a variety of people or functions, and you just never know where it's going to take you, and you never know who you're going to meet. And in any event, you'll develop more as a person, and you may find some great job opportunities through those volunteer positions.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's not necessarily getting that full-on accounting hands-on experience, but if I think about our summer ambassador positions, these people are outside, they're constantly interacting with the public, they're problem solving, they're thinking on their feet. It's all kinds of little skills that you need to have in the workplace that you're learning, and it may not be exactly within that accounting field that you're looking to go into, but definitely skills that you need to develop for lifelong goals.
Yeah. Thanks for you both adding on to that. And Tyrone, it seems like you have tons of opportunities during more normal times. But yeah, even if right now companies aren't hiring, this is great information we can take away and use for when we are applying. So thank you for that. So I'll move on to our next question, and it is actually going to be, We're wondering how competitive positions are in your industry. So I'll start with you, Tyrone, if you can speak to that.
Okay, I'll start with one word, very. It can be very competitive in accounting.
Don't discourage us now.
In general, yeah, exactly. I don't want to discourage you. That doesn't mean there's not work. I think there's work for everybody out there. It's very competitive. In particular, going through the CPA route, there's a lot of competition at the start. But if you can put your head down and bullet your way through, you have a lifetime worth of work. So I think it's very, very rewarding. If just touching on the CPA program, it is very challenging to get into, and passing exams, I'll say it requires a tremendous amount of discipline and focus. But like I say, if you can get through that process, if you've got good training as an accountant, you will have a lifetime's worth of work. There is no question. There's no need to worry about having work at any point in time. I think in addition to the technical skills that you require, that you'll get some of that out of university, and you get some of that on the job training. The soft skills are important. The enthusiasm, desire to learn, will really set you apart as you enter in any profession. If you have a passion for something, and I don't think anyone's going to come out of Mount St. Vincent and say, I've got a passion for debits and credits. And I don't think that'll set you aside in a job interview. But if you have a passion for learning, you have an enthusiasm to learn about an industry, you have enthusiasm to meet people and learn from them, I think that's going to take you a long way, and you'll get a lot more of whatever you do. And hopefully it's accounting, and we get a lot of you in our industry. But it is very competitive, but if you're enthusiastic about it, that'll carry the day for you, I think.
Thank you. So I'm going to move towards you, Lauren. Can you add to the competitiveness of an accounting position in your industry?
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree with what Tyrone just mentioned. It definitely is a highly competitive environment, and those soft skills are very important, and having a CPA designation is extremely important. And that can just open your door to like many different options in your career. It's kind of a starting point, and then as you get into either a business or get into a function of the business that you really enjoy, that may not be accounting and finance, but that CPA designation opens your mind to all other aspects of business as well. And I think it's pretty important. I did the combined MBA CPA, well, it was CMA at the time, and that was a very good program. It was just a few more courses to do, and then you got both designations of an MBA and a CPA. So definitely look into that as an option as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Lauren. And Carolyn, can you add to that the competitiveness of an accounting job in your industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree with everything Tyrone and Lauren said. I mean, it is very competitive. I wish I could tell you that's not the case, but I actually think don't let it discourage you. What I would say is like the other perspective on it is if you think about COVID and the impact that this entire pandemic has had, it can be tough when you're feeling like you're a student and you're like, how am I going to get a job? I'm going through university and, how am I going to find something? But if you think about pretty much every single company that's still standing and it's still thriving and growing, they do have an accounting and finance function. It's critical in every single business in every single area. So I think it's just really about, keeping your mindset positive and don't let yourself ever feel discouraged. I know it can be easy to kind of get worried or to feel like, I've applied for so many and nothing's happening. Like, don't take it personal, like use it, keep your mindset there, keep it positive. And I really think try and find creative ways, right? Where it is developing those soft skills, where it is finding those different relationships to get in there, because give yourself a little bit of grace that, the first 2-3 years kind of getting yourself established is tough, right? But it's like anything, you got to pay your dues initially. So just don't let yourself get discouraged, just keep going. And if you face 100 no's, you know, you never know, the next one might be a yes. So, so yeah, find other people that are in a similar position that you guys can support each other and kind of keep your spirits up, because it is an incredibly promising field. Once you get into it, I mean, there is security there. It's just, you got to find a way to get yourself through that initial slump of kind of proving yourself and getting yourself established. And then I think when you do, the opportunities are huge and potential. It's just, yeah, keep that toughness, keep that mental toughness when you're starting out.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, you guys are giving us very positive motivation to push through because the rewards seem to be there that you can achieve. So I'm gonna move on to our next question, but before I do, I'll remind all of our students here today that if you do have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box, and if we get time at the end, we will get to them. But to move on to our next question, we would like to know what opportunities for advancement does the profession have to offer? You could even speak to your company or just in general, but I'll start with you, Lauren.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I briefly touched on it. It's when you have that CPA designation, the opportunities are basically endless. I mean, it's a great starting point to your professional career. You can be involved in any type of business, from nonprofits, government, private. You know, it's just a matter of kind of getting that leg up on other individuals to get into the door. And then you say, well, you know, I actually am really focused on operations, but your CPA background will give you a better sense of efficiencies and functions that you feel that you can get involved with. And maybe that's an area you want to get into. There's HR backgrounds. I've seen CPAs who are VP of HRs in companies. So it's the opportunities are really endless. It's really what you want to get into. CPAs are seen as leaders in the business because of their knowledge, but also because of their high level of ethics as well. And that's very important in terms of leadership for a lot of businesses.
Awesome. Thank you, Lauren. So Carolyn, would you be able to add on to that? What type of positions there are for, or opportunities for advancement in your industry?
Yeah, for sure. I think the nice thing with kind of pursuing a career in accounting and finance is there's no real upper ceiling, and you get to choose where you want to go. So I think that's absolutely true. I mean, you see people making it to CEO and board of directors that have the CPA background and the CPA foundation. So I think the sky is, there is no real upper limit. The other thing is it may not be the top of mind for you right now, but what I kind of like about accounting is you can make a really good living and have a really enjoyable career, even in this field, if you choose to take some time where maybe work isn't your number one priority. So I can share from my own experience. You know, I have a young daughter in grade 1, and at a little point earlier in my career, I kind of shifted into a part-time arrangement. I wanted to stay in the workforce, but I didn't necessarily want to be in a full-time, that I wanted to be able to kind of take a little bit of a pause to be able to spend a bit more time with her while still keeping up my skills. So I think that's kind of a neat thing that you can do in an accounting and finance career, is that you can have periods of time where you're saying, you know what, I'm feeling really ambitious. I want to make it to the top of the organization. And you can have other times when you say there's some things outside of work and outside of earning a living that I want to pursue. And for some people that might not always be a family, maybe that's, travel, not during COVID, obviously, but you might have other interests that you want to pursue. So that's one of the things that I think you get with a career in finance and accounting, is that you can choose at different points in time a different chapter where your career is more or less the focus. So that's kind of what I've appreciated with this field.
Yes, life does have a major impact on how we continue our career there. So it's great to see that you balance those both things. So Tyrone, would you be able to tell us about any advancement opportunities you could think of in your industry or even in the company you work for?
Yeah, look, I'll echo the comments that I think there's a plethora of opportunities for accountants. And I agree with Carolyn around the flexibility. When I think back a few years ago when we had our first child, our daughter, I did the same thing. I approached the firm I was working with and talked about the fact I need to reduce my hours because my focus was going to change for the next 5 to 10 years until she became a teenager and didn't want to talk to me anymore. And now she's talking to me again because she's in her 20s. But there's a lot of flexibility. You can ramp it up if you want. You can do whatever you want. There's CEOs, in Clearwater, there's VP fleets. There's all kinds of different titles that are non-accounting related that you might find yourself in. It's really, it's only limited by your imagination. But there's also the flexibility to tamp that down a little bit and refocus at periods of time, which I think is really important. As for specific jobs, as Lauren mentioned, you can work in a public environment. That could be a public accounting firm. It could be government. You could work in a private environment, a small company, or perhaps a not-for-profit. On the private environment, you've got small not-for-profits, you got large not-for-profits, you got smaller companies, you got larger companies, and they all provide variety of experience. With not-for-profits, it can typically be very rewarding from a service to the community perspective. Smaller companies, you get to experience doing a bit of everything. So you get to experience every function of the company, probably from janitorial to payroll, but which can be really interesting. Larger companies, perhaps a little bit less variety, but you can get a lot more support and focus on and training on very specific areas. So there's pros and cons to each of the different ones. As for types of work, you could be an auditor doing audits of public companies, private company books. You could be a tax specialist doing personal or corporate tax return. You could work for CRA. On the management accounting side, you could be preparing and analyzing organizations' books and records. On the clerk side, if you wanted to just focus, keep your career focused on clerks and have a little bit more personal time, you can specialize in areas such as receivables, payables, inventory. You can teach. Now, if you're going to teach full-time at a university environment, you need a little bit more training, but you can teach at least part-time as well. I've taught part-time at St. Mary's and very much enjoyed that. So there's a tremendous amount of jobs you can do. And I've just listed the accounting ones, but there's a lot more through networking and through your day job. You get exposed to a lot of other people. And if you've got that discipline, and as Lauren mentioned, one thing the profession is known is for ethics. I would also add another thing that we tend to be known for is unemotional decision making. I.e., we like to get all the facts, assemble them, and make a balanced decision. And accounting profession has very much a good reputation for that, and that can carry you forward into a bunch of different opportunities. The positions you'll hear of: CFO right at the top, Chief Financial Officer, VP Finance, VP Treasury. There's all kinds of management titles. There's all kinds of clerk titles. Titles aren't that important, except for they imply the degree of variety you might be exposed to. But there's a tremendous amount of jobs, plethora of opportunities, and you'll have a lifetime of employment.
Yeah, if I could add one more thing in there too, another opportunity just in terms of looking out and into your community is a number of boards, volunteer or non-volunteer board positions are looking for those who have an accounting, finance, CPA designation as their background. And it's a great way to get involved in a lot of variety of community groups and have some outreach.
Lauren, it's a good point. And because I forgot to mention earlier, I'm on the board of governors and chair the finance committee at Mount St. Vincent, which is how I got connected to the
Yeah, I sit on the board with the Zatzman Sportsplex, and I've previously sat on a board at my son's daycare. So it's definitely something I enjoy to do. It gives you a bit of exposure into another business, and you're able to help in any way that you can with those positions.
And Lauren, I think as you're kind of hinting at, as much as you give these volunteer organizations, you get. And what you get is the diversity. You're dealing with a variety of functions and a variety of people, and depending on the organization, just a totally different perspective of how you might look at the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for everyone adding on to that. It seems like there are tremendous opportunities that students could get involved in later on in their profession. So that's awesome that you could speak to that. So I'm going to move on to our next question there. And we talked about the hard work that you have to put through to achieve these opportunities, as well as the positive outcomes that can occur. But we would love to know what your favorite thing is about your job that you enjoy doing. So I'll start with you, Tyrone, if you don't mind speaking to that.
I don't mind speaking. Look, I really do love helping formulate and implement strategy, in particular from a treasury perspective. So, two of the things that I talk about that I've really been excited about over the last 10 years, the last 5 years is with Chorus. We've purchased 60 regional aircraft and have leased them to companies all over the world, from Africa to Asia to Europe to South America. Each of those bring different opportunities, different risks, require different thought process. Dealing with new lenders from France to Germany to the UK, et cetera. That's been really, really exciting. I can think back to my Clearwater days. We did a $200 million acquisition of a seafood business in Scotland. I remember waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to answer questions around due diligence and how we were going to finance that business. I remember the CFO telling me, we need you to raise $125 million, and we need you need to give an answer in the next 2 weeks. And then coming back 2 days later and saying, no, make that 200. We need you to raise, and going, how am I going to do that? And then, sitting back and thinking about the relationships we have with the business, the relationships we have with external lenders, and figuring it out and putting it together. And that's the stuff that gets me up early in the morning. I don't need an alarm clock for it. It's really exciting. I love how to figure out how to best fund an organization, taking into account the opportunities in the business, the risks, and the seasonal and cyclical variability. An aviation business is quite a bit different from a seafood business. They both were very heavy capital. They were very capital intensive, i.e. they required a lot of investment in assets, but the drivers and the risks in the both businesses are both different. So the solutions need to be different. And you don't go into these businesses knowing the answers. You just, I didn't join Chorus knowing the answers, but what I did know is I understood the fundamentals. So I felt comfortable I could identify the risks, and then felt comfortable enough in myself that working with advisors, we could together analyze the options and come up with some reasonable recommendations. But you have to have an openness to learning, to realizing, even at my age, which is 50, that you don't know everything. There's things still to learn, and be excited about it rather than be intimidated by it. Over the last 15 years, I've been involved in raising about $3 billion in capital. And that all that capital has been invested in 2 Atlantic Canadian companies, Chorus Aviation and Clearwater. So I'm really proud about that, but we're not done yet. There's more to be done. So that's really what excites me about mine.
Seems like it could be very self-rewarding for you. So Carolyn, would you be able to tell us what do you enjoy about your job, your favorite?
For sure. 2 things, the creativity and continuously learning about business. So I really would not have thought that a career in accounting would lead to so many more creative areas and ways, but we're always trying to find different ways to take really dry, really complex subjects and make them more accessible to people. So an example would be last week, a project that we undertook. I work primarily in the energy and power and utility sector. So what we were trying to figure out is, how do we take these concepts that are a very complex industry, power generation, transmission, distribution, all these concepts that people may not really understand, and we actually turned it into a comparison to a cupcake shop to help make people understand the different segments of the market. So I just think the chance to be able to take, I think of accounting as it's the way that you keep score in business. It's the way that it's the language of the business. And there's so many people out there that struggle to be able to read financial statements, that struggle to be able to speak this language. So I think the fact that you're studying this puts you in such a unique position, because you can help translate those ideas to more and more people and help make them more accessible. So yeah, I think there's so much more room for creativity in that field, and also learning. So I absolutely agree with, I think a lot of what we've all been kind of talking about has been how important it is to actually learn about the business that you're working in. So even if you're the accountant there, or even if you're kind of working in, an outdoor events type of situation, the more curious you get and want to learn about the actual business and the industry that you're in, the more potential that you have to actually grow. So I think just kind of keeping yourself curious and keeping yourself always willing to learn new things. I mean, I've been in this field for a long time, but I'm still continuously learning and continuously figuring out new tools and new softwares I haven't used. So for example, I'm recently launching a YouTube channel to help teach some different kind of accounting sort of lessons. And I'm kind of figuring it all out. I don't know exactly what I'm doing here, just kind of bumbling around, figuring out how it's going to work. But I really think that there's a lot that if you just keep an open mindset and say, you know what, I can learn different things and kind of practice new skills, and keep yourself really curious about the business that you're working in or the organization you're volunteering with. I think you'll find that, yeah, there's so much that you can get involved in that you might not have first thought. So yeah, it's a curiosity and openness to learning.
Carolyn, you should be working in investor relations. You would be a perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Carolyn. Yeah, I know even in my co-op, I love learning new things, and even more, I love teaching someone. It makes me so excited that I know more, have that on my
Exactly.
shoulders. Yeah.
Oh, it's so true. And like, I think one of the best ways to actually like deepen your learning is to teach someone else, right? So it's really one of the best ways, because as you start trying to break something down and say, you know, how am I going to teach this to someone else? You might actually find some gaps in your own learning. So as much as you're trying to help someone else, it's actually helping you as well. So it's a good study exam tip to try out.
Awesome. Thank you. And Lauren, would you be able to tell us what you enjoy the most about your job?
I really enjoy what we are trying to do as an organization, and that's what helps me get up every day, is that I'm very passionate about the work that we are trying to do. And I may not be directly involved with the work that we're doing. I'm kind of more behind the scenes, but I do get involved with every aspect of our organization. And, you know, I oversee both the accounting and the IT department, which I'm not an IT person, but it's about people managing. And I love the work that Develop Nova Scotia is doing and trying to do. It's very inclusive, it's very social driven, and we want to ensure that all people of Nova Scotia and beyond are included in everything that we do. So it's, I'm proud of that, and that's very enjoyable. And there have been times where I can't say that about the job that I'm working in. And as you move on to new roles, you realize it's a learning experience that you eventually realize what you want to spend your life doing. And I'm very happy where I am because I enjoy the work.
Thank you. You all seem very passionate about your careers. It's great to see. And yeah, it doesn't matter if you're at the forefront or behind the scenes, it's the whole team that helps the success happen. So that's great to hear. Thank you. So I'm going to move on to our next question, and it's kind of touching up a bit on technology. There have been major advancements in technology that are impacting businesses at every forefront there. How do you think that this impacts accounting in general? You can again speak to your position or just the basics, but yeah. Carolyn, could I start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I think back of my role at Direct Energy, I was leading our accounting and finance team for the regulated segment. And one of the things we were working with was what we ended up finding was we offshored a lot of the more routine, repetitive work to other parts of the world, primarily to India. So what we ended up finding was the people that we wanted to kind of keep in Canada in our Calgary office were the people with the highest level of expertise that can really think through problems, that bring some of that problem solving there, and some of the more routine, repetitive components we ended up offshoring. And as far as the technology side of things, what we've started to explore and didn't fully get implemented yet, but I do think is going to be a trend that's going to take place over the next 5 years for sure, is we call it robotic process automation. So if you think of a bank account reconciliation, if you think of a balance sheet reconciliation, there are certain business rules behind it that you can eventually actually design AI, machine learning, a lot of that can actually end up being automated. I would say if you're kind of looking at a career in accounting, don't look at that as a threat. Don't view that as being, oh no, there's not going to be people to do all of these, tedious accounting reconciliations. I think it's actually a huge opportunity because it means that the more interesting value add analytical side of the work, you can't turn that to a robot. You can't automate some of that. So I think it makes roles in accounting actually more rewarding and more enriching. But yeah, looking at, how do we use robots to automate simple things and repetitive things like journal entries and balance sheet reconciliations. It's definitely an area that is coming, that technology is going to enable. I think companies are at different phases of kind of exploring it, but I think it's a trend that is coming. It's a matter of when, not if it's coming. And I think it's about looking at it not as a threat to your career, but more as like, hey, this is a good thing for my career because I can do the more interesting things as a result.
Thank you. That's a great way to look at it, actually. We're constantly hearing, well, I don't know if everyone is, but at least myself, I've heard, don't pick careers that can be replaced by technology. So that's a good viewpoint to look at it as. So Lauren, would you be able to tell us the impacts of technology in accounting from your perspective?
Sure. And if you hear any noise, my dog has just come over to greet me. So I completely agree with Carolyn. It is something to embrace and not to be afraid of. It's coming and it's here. There are definitely automated processes, especially when it comes to, those postings to the ledger, reconciliations, as Carolyn mentioned. But I completely agree with her comments in that it's going to enable you as in your position to do more than you could before. You'll have more time to explore other items that maybe get pushed to the side because you have to deal with the day-to-day and, leave those day-to-day things to the robot. And, you can focus on what's actually really important for that business and spend your time there.
Thank you. How about you, Tyrone? Anything you can add on about how technology impacts accounting positions, even specifically in your industry?
Yeah, I can. Well, I graduated from university in '90. So back then, believe it or not, in Nova Scotia, there were still some companies that were maintaining manual ledgers, so written ledgers. Not too many, but there were a few. Then, of course, more and more, you saw the use of computers. When I started with KPMG, it was the first portable computers were Macintosh, and they were those big square boxes that weighed a ton. And you got a printer to go with that. That was about the size of a small suitcase. And the whole idea was you carried one on each shoulder. But if you fell down on your back, you were like a turtle. You couldn't get up. They were so heavy. And then more and more, you saw computers become more, more commonplace. And you saw everybody was automated then. It eliminated the, I think both Carolyn and Lauren have touched this. It eliminated the kind of the more boring parts, the more manual part, the adding and subtracting parts of the job. What we're seeing today, if I look at Chorus today, we've got a couple specialty positions in the company that are in the finance group. Really, everything they do is around managing data. It's around thinking, and when you think about managing data, the really interesting part of it is you have to think about, what do you want to get on the back end? What kind of information do you need to produce on the back end? Because in order to figure out what you want to collect for data on the front end, you need to think about what's on the back end. So if it's not just about I bought something and it's X dollars on this date. If you want to be able to slice and dice that data 88 different ways on the back end, you got to track 8 or 9 different data points on the front end. So we have full-time people who all they do is manage finance data and then use that to produce reports and information. That's a specialty position now that didn't exist 20 years ago. I think as both Lauren and Carolyn have said, there's a lot more time now spent on analysis and providing context for data. That's what turns data into information. It's the context, it's the analysis. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of numbers and letters that's of no use to anyone. So that's where the real value add is managing the data, being able to turn it into useful information, and be able to provide context. So I think the jobs are quite rewarding actually now.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, you mentioned about your data and the data analysis. Well, you need that data to be accurate. So, having AI involved, you're going to have less chance of any sort of human error in terms of that data input. And it just makes the data that you're pulling from that much more accurate.
Awesome, thank you. It seems like it could help us all in all professions moving forward. So that's a great perspective you guys brought to the table. So I'm going to move on to our final panel question, and I'm going to start with you, Lauren. We would love to know what advice you could give to someone pursuing a career in finance, maybe something you wish you knew when you first started, or something you learned later on.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we've all spoke about the CPA designation, and I know everybody listening here is in their university days. So it would be the next step if that's truly what you want to do for your career. If you want to think about those long-term goals, you have to get through another few more years of vigorous studying and some challenging times to complete that designation. It will open a lot of doors for you as you move forward. It may not be for everyone. There could be people listening in today that may not be what they want to do, and there's still opportunities for those people. So don't let that discourage you. It's also something that you can come back to. You could go out and have some good life, or have a few years under your belt in terms of work experience, and then realize, yes, I do now want to complete my designation. Well, it's something you can come back to at that time and revisit. And there are ways to do it fast track, and there's ways to do it a little bit more slow. So just embrace it and try to grind through it, and you'll it's a few years of hard work, but at the end of it, you'll have a lot more opportunities available for you.
Thank you, Lauren. Tyrone, would you be able to give some advice to our students here?
Yeah, sure. Look, I agree on the CPA is it's great training, and it really gives you a differentiating factor when you're looking for a job opportunities. There's a couple of pieces of advice, and they're the same piece of advice I give to my two children who are in their 20s. One of whom is at Mount St. Vincent in his first year of business, but is not on this call because it's his dad. He gets the advice at home. The first is very simple. Ask a lot of questions. Inquiring minds learn a lot more than shy or passive ones. I used to be quite shy when I graduated from St. Mary's and started KPMG. I was very shy, and I was a little bit worried about asking a stupid question. And then in my second year, I worked with a fellow who was a year younger than me, and he was not afraid to ask anything. He would ask any question, was not afraid of looking stupid, and I saw how quickly he was learning, and how he was developing. And quite frankly, I just followed his lead. I said, you know what, he's doing the right thing. Just don't be afraid about stupid questions. The only stupid one is the one you don't ask. The last thing I'd say is always try to get at the why something's being done. The how or the what are usually just derivatives of the why. And if you focus on understanding the why, that's going to ensure a couple of things. One, that you enjoy your work and you get as much as you can out of it. And two, that you never stop learning. And that'll be rewarding for you no matter what you do.
Thank you. Some great advice there we could use in our success anywhere, actually. That's perfect. I know even as a co-op student entering a new company, it can be quite scary, and you're encouraged to voice yourself and ask questions, but it's sometimes intimidating until you get into the role of things. So it's great hearing that from you guys, because we know how important it is. It's just getting it out that can be tough sometimes. And Carolyn, we'll swing over to you. Any last advice you can give to our students today?
Yeah, sure. I think my advice would be actually from a story that I heard from kind of a slightly unexpected area, but he was the maker of the Dilbert cartoon. And basically his advice was, I'll paraphrase a little bit, but he was saying, I think we all recognize those cartoons. They're kind of fairly iconic. And he said, I'm not the best drawer. I'm not the funniest of all comedians. I'm not the person that knows the most about business and corporate and office environments, but his strategy was essentially to blend together different complementary skill sets. So I think he took the approach of, not necessarily of pursuing a level of proficiency and getting yourself into the top, the top 10 or the top 20% of your drawing skills, or the top 10 or top 20% of your comedy and humor skills. But it's an interesting strategy, because instead of trying to kind of get to be, the 1 or 2% best accountant in the world. And I think you absolutely need to master your field. I'm not trying to say that you don't, but instead of necessarily trying to be the top 1 or top 2%, because we know only 1 to 2% can be the top 1 or 2%. A strategy that you can pursue in your career is to actually look at complementary skill sets. So get yourself as high as you possibly can with your skill set and your knowledge and your practical abilities in accounting, but consider looking at creative complementary skill sets that you can pursue. So I would say that's what I did in my career quite a bit. I'm not the best accountant in the world. I did a good job. I ran a good accounting shop, but I wouldn't say that I'm, world class, best at debits and credits ever. But what I ended up doing was kind of pursuing complementary areas. So I've got my PMP in project management, and then more recently kind of pursued some of the software development. And I think it becomes a combination of these different skill set areas that taken together makes you unique and valuable. And that rarity can actually help you in your career. So if you're kind of looking at it and saying, I don't know if I'll ever necessarily be the 1 or 2% best accountant in the world, because we can't all be in that position, maybe look at, get yourself as good as you possibly can with your CPA, really pursue that, learn the business that you're in. And yeah, look at skill sets that are complementary to that. So definitely, I think one of them should be understanding the business that you're in and the operations and how it works. So learn your accounting side, learn the business that you're in, and maybe consider if there's, a third skill set or a third pillar that you could pursue that you kind of have some strengths in. And I think kind of taking those combinations of skill areas can kind of end up creating opportunities for you that you might not have. It's a good way for you to be able to differentiate yourself from others.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. That's some great advice that you're giving us that we can take away from this panel and use it later on. I do actually have a student question that I can ask you, and it's touching up on CPA that you've all touched up on. So I'll maybe let someone just jump in and then you can add to it. So the question is that we have a student who's pursuing a CPA designation. They will be graduating in this spring, but will have to complete a few more prerequisites before they can begin with their CPA, PEP, CPA, PEP. I'm not sure if you guys can attest to this, but they were wondering with these factors, whether or not it would be worthwhile to still apply for a position at accounting firms despite not having full CPA eligibility.
Well, I'm a couple of years dated, so maybe I'll start and then Lauren and Carolyn can correct me. But the CPA firm, if you go in the firm route versus the company route, the firms usually recruit in the fall for the following year. So the recruiting, the recruiting they would be doing for September, they've already completed that recruiting for the most part. Co-op job positions, you don't have to have all your requirements for a co-op position, and in fact, if you're your fourth year with most of your courses, and you've got some more courses to do in the fall or next year, whatever, you might a co-op position might very much work with a public firm. If you think about going into private, where you really want to think about working for a company where you're going to get some support through your study program, time off, etc. Some of the larger companies in Atlantic Canada, just to name a couple that would support, we have done it in the past, of course, but I know that Amira and Empire, i.e. Sobeys, run a number of CPAs through their program. So those would be organizations you could approach as well. I think it never hurts to start early. I think you just want to be, practical and pragmatic. Without your full qualifications, unlikely you get hired in a full-time position in a CPA firm. But the co-op might be an option there.
Thank you. Could you guys add on to that at all? Whether it be worth their while to still pursue a position there?
Yeah, I mean, you can't let a couple of courses stop your goals. So if that's really what you want to do, it's just a matter of being upfront and honest. If you get the opportunity to have an interview with someone, just say, look, here's my position. This is what I'm striving to do. This is what I need to do in order to get to that point. And hopefully they'll be able to support you through that.
Yeah, I think Lauren and Tyrone summed it up really well. Nothing to add, but yeah, absolutely. I think good advice there.
Awesome, everyone. That's perfect. You really gave some good pointers, especially in that interview process. That's something I always wonder when put into a dilemma like that. So I hope that answers our question there. And that does bring us to the end of our panel. We're very thankful for your time today. This is some great advice and opinions, and even just seeing you in your positions, it's great to hear how you like it and what you experience. So thank you for giving your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you, Kayla.
Yes, thank you, Kayla.
I agree. It was a lot of fun. Good luck with everyone on your journey.
So I have no more questions. So that brings us to the end of our accounting panel today. Thank you, students, for tuning in who was able. And yeah, it worked out well. Awesome.
Have a
We'll say
nice
bye.
day, everyone.